Okay, so welcome. I was going to say one, but now welcome one and all. I should say at the outset, everyone, hey, hello, welcome. That today I'm leading us through a practice where we are going to be sort of as I am now, either sitting or lying down, okay? And yeah, of course, always, no things necessary. I'm like, hey, I think as I mentioned in the email I sent to all the peeps this morning, I totally used to this. Well, no worries, no sweat. What I did say, and actually for the people that would be viewing after the fact anyway, is that I used to, before I started even teaching yoga, I went to a class sort of every Sunday morning, I think it was, weekly, and the instructor would really, because it was a Sunday morning early, would start us off on our backs, and we would often do a full hour practice, and maybe the odd time we'd get up to a low lunge or to one downward facing dog, but for the most part, we were just as you see it. And it can be it's not a lesser than practice, not at all. It's there's lots of goodness down on the mat. Okay, so exactly, absolutely. And now for today, I've got some. What I was going to say at the outset is, if you are follow my voice rather than following what I'm doing, because at points I will actually sit up even though I'm cueing poses where we're perhaps lying down. For most of it, though, I will be demoing as we go, so that if you're watching, you can sort of take a peek and see what my body looks like, which does not mean that that's where you have to go at all. So for sure. Well, and I was going to say, I'm going to try to give options in each of the poses where you can sort of play with the levers, either kick it up in terms of intensity or drop it down. And the go-to, I mean, sitting really can be sitting in whatever position is comfortable. As far as lying, what I would suggest is for you, Devin, for everyone here, is wonderful pose is, and I'm showing you here, is just to bring your legs up and wrap your arms around. Maybe I'll give you the side view. So this is just child's pose flipped upside down. And what can be sort of nice, in fact, this was the highlight of that Sunday morning class way back when I was telling you about, is just this gentle rocking. Rocking baby, yeah. And you can come right up into the happy baby, but it's just about finding rest wherever you are, okay? So with that, with the preliminaries out of the way, what I'm going to suggest is, if you have a pillow, so I've got an actual, and I see pillows, there we go, awesome. You can use that. Your kind of yoga bolster, a yoga pillow if you've got those, but a regular pillow, just as good. What we're going to do is, sitting on our mat, take the pillow and bring it in underneath your bent legs, and then really kind of just boom, pop it right in there as close to your... Oh, not at all, you're going to go for it. You can just kind of snug it up towards your sitting bones, okay? And then allow your legs to just drop over the pillow. And then with support, you can come down and find yourself in a shavasana. So find yourself in a corpse pose. So this will be our starting pose for today. So just arriving on the mat, arriving in your reclined position, and not trying to do too much at all. In fact, for the first moment or two, can you just allow your body to settle? And what I mean by that is not that you're trying to stop all movement, not at all. We're not going to try to stop thoughts or worry about fidgeting or all the little tics and feelings and whatever's happening in our bodies. That's part of the sort of dropping in and settling in process. So just allow yourself to come down from the day. Here's where I can totally feel even in my own body where I need this. I don't know if any of you had the kind of day that I had, but I, without getting into self-criticism, I noticed myself sort of darting from task to task. Gotta do this, now this, now this, pop, 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 moving around. Or, now there was choice involved there, but maybe, and I heard from you, Dad, but I assume for others as well, like sometimes we don't have the choice, it's just circumstances present themselves. And we can feel like we're being yanked from being still or being able to respond to what's going on to instead reacting. You might notice whatever's coming up, like where your mind is going or what your body's sensing, what it's feeling as we lie here. Beginning to connect with your breath if you haven't done that already. So feeling air, feeling breath enter your body. Not being ashamed or shy about letting your belly balloon up. And then drop back down towards your spine with the exhales. Don't worry too much. You can hear that I'm actually allowing my exhales to come out through my parted lips. So inhaling through my nose. And then a gentle sigh. I'm almost not actively blowing the air, but just letting it fall out. Just taking in what I need and letting go of what I don't. One final thought here, irony in terms of me saying thought, is that often, I was going to say that when we are reacting, if we get into kind of doing mode in our days and are jumping from task to task or, whatever event or calamity is happening, this and then this and then this and then this, we'll often talk about getting lost in our thoughts and lost up in our head. And that can be true. Definitely that was my experience of this morning. What we often maybe ignore out of that is by focusing on our thoughts is what's not happening, which is actually listening to what's happening in our bodies, what we're feeling. All the little sensations. And I don't mean just like the pleasant sensations and the maybe nastier, more troublesome ones like itching and pain and so on. I mean, that stuff's going to happen, but literally just taking a moment to decide, or listen, I should say, not to decide, but to feel what our bodies need. And in my experience, often what they are calling out for when we're bouncing around in that reactive mode is just this. It's just pausing to maybe relax down a little bit and just feel what's going on. Okay, you can leave one of your legs, doesn't really matter which one. I'm going to start with my left just to change things up from our normal pattern of everything starts in the right. I'm just going to hug that knee in by wrapping my hands around the front of the knee. Nice big bend there, flexing my leg into itself. And then I'll straighten that knee up, releasing my hands, instead bringing them in behind the knee as I stretch up through my heel towards the ceiling. So my leg's straight up, and then on the exhale, not just letting the leg drop, but actively pressing it down slowly with resistance. So with resistance that you generate. Okay. Inhale, come up. So it's almost like you're tensing your muscles here in the leg so that you're coming up through resistance, and then exhale, you're coming back down through resistance. So these are leg salutations. I love them. I hope you do too. We'll be here for a minute, so if you don't, that's okay. You can just kind of play with this. See what's working for you, see what isn't. You might also, when I say play, notice, see on the next time you come up through that resistance, point your toe so that you're actively reaching toward the ceiling. And notice how that changes ever so slightly what's going on. Keep it pointed as the leg comes down. So now you're pointing toward probably what is your computer or camera. And then press the heel out towards the camera. And then through that sort of imaginary resistance, press the heel up. Keep that heel up, maybe even toes pointing down a little bit as our last descent on this side, we come back down. So just in that little action of pointing heel versus pointing toes, we can create different sensations through the front and the back of the lower leg. Okay, let's release that leg down. At the opposite knee, we'll wrap the front with our hands, maybe interlacing the fingers, and just give it a hug in. Good. And notice here we're keeping our spines in a neutral position, so the normal curves of our spine. So if you feel like you're pressing your low back into the mat actively, maybe drop your sitting bones down a little bit. So the feeling of almost like tilting your pelvis forward so that we're not, you can make contact with the mat on the lower back, but not pressing with any amount of force. Okay, let's release that leg, wrap behind the knee, press up through the heel or through the toes. You can decide. Okay, you can even absolutely work in some gentle mobilizations, rotating ankle, and just working with breath here. Let's do 3 more of these. So inhaling up, exhale down. And it does not matter to our hips and to our legs if there's actual resistance there. So in other words, we don't need to add any weight, just the simple act of moving slowly as if we're going through quicksand here or mud has the effect of turning everything on. Waking the hip up. Press up, or maybe point, and down. Last one. Come up. Good. And down. And then when both legs come down, let's remove our pillow. You can just move it out of the way, off of the mat. And then just give our legs a little shake. So just the feeling of toes maybe going side to side, or you can just kind of shuffle the heels up and down. Good. And then from there, we'll place our what are those called again? The soles of the feet flat on the mat. Support your head and your neck with one hand, and then use the other hand to gently come up for a moment. Okay. Good. Nice. How are we doing? Okay. I have that effect. No, I shouldn't tease. Are you just really, really go easy with yourself and take your time. Okay? All right. So what we're going to do from here is we're going to move through a little sequence on our backs. So we're going to be back down on our backs. And I'm actually going to turn, I think, sideways on my mat so that you can sort of see, perhaps with a little bit better perspective, what's happening when you need to do that. So just again, reminder, especially if you joined us late, if you feel the need to take a break, whether that is dizziness or discomfort or really whatever, just like it would feel really nice to take a breather, then it's our supine or our inverted child's pose, okay, right here, and then just a little gentle rock, okay? So however you find yourself right now, can you come down onto the mat, and knees can be bent, and soles of our feet can be flat. I see, I got it that time. Soles of our feet can be flat on the mat, okay? And then from here, just a little option for support in your low back, because we're going to do some lifting of our legs here. So if this feels comfortable, we can lift both legs up just like so, okay? Engaging through the back and pressing the heels up. But if that feels at all hinky, if that feels pinchy in the low back, can be nice for a bit of support to take the palms of both hands, put them down on the mat. So the tops of my hands are landing on the back of my hips, the big bones, the ilium at the back of the hip, okay? And then from there, I can squeeze my legs together and inhale to straighten the knees and bring the legs up. And then we'll hold here, breathing. 3, 2, 1. Good. And then knees are bent, but just halfway. And then, like your knees are on an imaginary chair. Good. And we're going to stay there. Now remember, your child's pose is accessible to you at any point. So I'm not breaking, but you can, okay? Or at least not breaking yet. So keeping our legs on, or our heels on that imaginary chair seat, let's just play by lifting one of those feet up. So it's a little scissor action here. And then drop it down. And then the other side. So we're always coming back to that imaginary chair seat. And down. So that's one on each side. Let's see if we can do 3 more. Pressing up on the inhale. Exhale. Come on down. Inhale. And down. Back. And forth. And once your body can kind of feel the flow of how we're asking it to move, your brain can get out of the way. Your thinking brain, your analyzing brain. You don't have to worry about what's happening last side. Instead, just feel your way through it. Coming back down to your imaginary chair. And I'm going to sneak my hands out, wrap my knees, and just give myself a little roll side to side. Good. Okay, so that's scissoring out of the way, and we're definitely building some heat. My glasses are fogging up, so yours too. Okay, awesome. We are in this together. Okay, so from here, with our scissoring out of the way, I'm actually just going to shift over so I've got room here. We're just going to move into some leg circles. Now, from here, we can absolutely ground one leg. Okay, so the feeling of really, before we move anything at all, let's lead with we'll end up picking up our left leg, although again, I'm not watching, I'm not judging from home, so you can pick up whatever leg you want, but what I'm going to do is really feel like I'm trying to take the belly of my thigh, okay, and the back of my lower leg right down into the ground on the right, and just let it settle there. Okay, so I'm not kind of cheating up like this. I'm not too worried now, because that ground is the sort of the set piece, the foundation of this. Next pose, then, however high I go, and it might not be as high, so I can take my left leg higher here. If I bend my leg, my right leg, you see I can kind of cheat up, but instead I'm going to drop that right leg down, and you can see my left, it drops down too, and that's okay. And then from here, we're simply going to roll our legs with whatever amount of space we've got. I'm actually going to move over a little bit because I've got my dining room table. It's getting in the way. That's okay. And let's link our breath to this. So inhale, bring the leg up around the circle, so like around the part of the clock, one face of the clock, sort of from 6 to noon. And then exhale down from noon to 6. Let's do one more. So I'm cueing clockwise. So if you're going clockwise, don't feel like you need to switch it up. Keep going as you're going. When you get to the bottom of your next circle, pause and notice where your right leg is. Okay? Can you balance your hips? Have you rolled out of this, or have you hiked that knee up? Find that ground, find that base, and then roll the leg, inhale up in the opposite direction. And exhale back down. Inhale. Exhale. Last one. Good. And then from here, we're just going to roll. So this is, I'm cueing as if I'm on my left leg. It'll be reversed if you're with your right. I'm just going to come onto my right side and then reaching back for my left, front of my left heel or left ankle. I'm just going to draw that knee back in space. Bring the heel however close to my sitting bone as I can, and try not to bring your head forward. So if, and I'm showing it right here, if I curl forward here, I'm taking all of the stretch out of the front of the thigh. So this is meant to counteract where we just were with all of that lifting and circling. Instead, it's almost a little lean back here and then pressing the knee back in space and just guiding with the hand to open the hip up. And then gently release. So we're not kicking out, we're just, and let it go. Maybe a little shake for that leg and roll back onto your back. I'm going to lose my fogged up glasses. Okay. We're back into our reclined position on our back, and we're going to move on to our other side. So adjust in your physical space wherever you need to. Good. Ground that left thigh. Really feel like it's anchored here. Okay? Point your toes up, and then with control, inhale, bring your right leg up. Okay? And we're going to, again, I'm going to start clockwise, so I'm going sort of down, 1, 2, 3 o'clock, 4, 5, 6 o'clock. This is dangerous. I'm going to start singing Happy Days. Inhale up the other side of the clock, and exhale. Coming down. This is the danger of non-yoga analogies, although I think the Fonz was probably a yogi on some level. All right. Last cycle here, or actually next to last. Or really, whatever feels right. Like if I'm cueing us through 3 or 4 of these, so now I'm coming into my last circle, but that doesn't feel right to you, you need to do less, you need to do more, go for it. Coming back down, pausing, checking out your base, so how's that left thigh and hip doing? Everything's grounded. And then inhale back up in that counterclockwise pattern. Exhale, come through. And you can, I haven't cued this, but you can even play with, in your circles, leaving that, so if it's my right leg that's circling, keeping that right hip grounded down, which is definitely going to make the circle smaller, or, and I'll do this on my next one, coming up and allowing the hip to lift with the leg, you might get a nice little twist, much larger circle. So no right or wrong here, just kind of exploring what feels nice, what feels not so nice. Okay, last one. And we'll let that go. And again, just a little kind of marching our legs out. So the feeling of lifting our knees up and down and up and down. Ha. And then we'll roll on to the opposite side. So now it would be left side. I'm propping my head into my hand. Okay, so elbow on my mat. Both feet are together for now. Okay. Now, this is where, if you're here, maybe even just check at your sort of your love handle on the side that's against the mat. So again, just like our low back, we don't want it pressing down. We want a little bit of space here, a little bit of lift. Okay? And then you can begin, rather than pulling your leg up, just by bending the knee, inhale, and bring that heel towards your sitting bone. And if you do this just with the muscles of the back of your leg, your hamstring, this should feel by now probably pretty interesting. Interesting being the yoga teacher's way of saying intense. Okay, so to lose that intensity, reach for the leg, reach for the front of the ankle, and then bowing your upper body away from the front of the hip. So we're not curling in and avoiding the stretch. Instead, we're opening everything up. Releasing the tension that we've generated through the front of the hip there. Come on back. Good. And go. Okay. Take a moment here. You can stay lying in just a reclined position. You might want to, at this point, come up into a happy baby. So bringing one foot up into each hand. And this actually, it's funny, happy baby gets, I'm always sort of intrigued by the fact that certain poses are categorized as being resting poses, quote unquote resting poses, and others not. Well, not at all. So this can be sort of an interesting place to go. So whether you're gripping as I am now on the inner part of the foot or coming around on the outer part, notice the balance that's involved here, particularly if you bring your head and maybe even your shoulders a little bit up off of the mat. And then if you tip to one side, being aware of, especially if you've got anything going on, as we may do, like inner ear vertigo or anything, but this little balance can feel like a lot. Right? So just go so slow. So it becomes this exploration. And when I say slow, I also could more properly say go short. Like don't feel like you need to flop. I'm going to do it here, but flop way over and then be stuck there. Instead, play with the idea of like sort of from the center point of your spine. You're just coming an inch one side and an inch the other, or half an inch. Maybe it's barely perceptible to the outside world, but you're feeling whatever's happening in your body as there's that slight shift from left to right. Okay? Good. And then, and I've just got to do a little time check here. Sorry, everyone. Time flies when we're having, oh my goodness, time really flies when we're having fun. Okay, let's actually come up gently, come up to sit. Absolutely take your time in getting there. Good. Now, how you sit with your legs, so I'm in what's called the easy pose. And the air quotes here are really intentional because it's not so easy to sit like this often, right? So you could be here. Alternately, you could bring your legs out in front and come into staff pose. Staff pose is a funny one too. Back to what I was saying about happy baby. I know initially when I began really studying the poses of yoga, and this to me felt like, oh, it's sitting pose. There's not much happening here. But if you notice, the way I'm sitting right now is I'm trying to get long from the sides of my hips up to my inner armpit. I'm trying to grow that whole line up so that if there's any sort of slouch here, we're getting rid of that. And then you can even bring your chin back in space in all likelihood. Bring your shoulders back in space. And I don't know what you're feeling. You really check out what's happening in your body. In my body right now, shaking at the front of the hips. You can even support yourselves with your hands behind to take that shake out and make it a little bit more relaxing. Okay? So we can stay here in this position. You can come back to your easy pose. Or, if you wish, you can bring one foot, doesn't matter which one, into the inner thigh so that your body is shaped sort of L-like. Okay? Good. All right. Now from here, we're simply going to bring the arms out. Okay? And then palms are face down, so thumbs forward, and then can you rotate so that your thumbs come down? Good. Inhale, and we're going to roll through. Now go gently so that thumbs come up, and then thumbs come behind. Okay. So rolling through here, forward, back. And something to play with here. If your shoulders are feeling super loose and just, this can feel sort of like a funny motion coming through in our shoulder girdle here, which doesn't mean we don't want to do it, but you may want to, it's the feeling here of almost like sucking the bone into the shoulder joint. So if you feel like maybe try this, bringing both arms out, so no rotation, just reach the fingers like you're trying to reach to the wall on either side, and then can you take the reach out by hugging in toward your spine? So you might see a teeny little creep in here, it's not much, and then in that sucked in position, that set position in our shoulder girdle, roll the shoulders. And we can play, leave say the left shoulder where it is, roll the right out, and then switch. Switch. And you can do this sort of as slowly or rapidly as you want. I'm going to bring one leg out as we do this and bring the other in. You may need to adjust, that's okay. And again, the legs are just optional really here. Let's bring one hand down to the side. Inhale, lift the other up. And then without losing our connection on that side that's extended, we can be sort of supporting ourselves here. Reach up, and it's not about collapsing over like this, but rather inhale up and exhale over into a little side bend. Good. Inhale, raise that arm up, bring the other up, inhale, drop the first one down, side bend the other way. And then inhale again, both legs, your upper legs, the ones that are attached to your shoulders. Bring your arms up. Okay, good. And then from here, exhale, arms come out to the side. Good. Inhale up. And then we're going to bend both elbows and drop the hands behind our heads. Good. You might actually reach if you want to get into a stretch through the back of the arm here, but not crunching our body. So everything still staying where it was. Inhale, both arms up, extend them out. Maybe give yourself a little rotation for kicks. Inhale, we come back up. Exhale, both come down. And then again, option for a little, yeah. And it's kind of interesting, and it's really interesting here because I'm seeing an image of myself. I'm seeing you practice, and then on another screen I'm seeing myself, and so I can see my hip rolling up. I'm like, stay down, hip, stay down. And that's okay. Really what that's showing is the compensation as we try to bring everything up here, and the lower body wants to help. That's all good, okay? Let's, again, we'll come up one more time. Inhale. Exhale, hands come out, and then we'll sweep them forward. Let's bring the right arm underneath. We can do whatever we want with the legs. So if you want to come back to staff pose, you can, or easy pose. And then bring the right arm under the left, okay? I should show, here's the alternative, is the right goes under the left, and we simply hug. And you can even sort of spider your fingers along the shoulder blades. And then on your inhale, blow your back out. So billow your back by pressing your spine out. So it's kind of that cat back from cat pose as you hug. And inhale, we'll let the arms go. Exhale, left comes under. Now you could be hugging on this side, or these can also be eagle arms. So the left arm circles around the right hooks onto the left. And then we're here. Now notice what I want to avoid, and what the tendency would be, whatever I'm doing with my arms, is to lean back, okay? So we're really still in this nice controlled shape, okay? Release wherever you are, yeah. And then just some gentle rolls. Okay. How we doing? Okay? Okay, cool. Where do we go next? We've done some circles, we've done some rotations, we've done our eagle arms, we've been playing with the legs. Oh, I know where we're... If we're going to be on the mat, and this is why I have my mat is blue, so that I can really get into visualizing the idea that I'm in water here, and we're going to make our bodies into boats. Okay, so boat pose. First thing is first is you may want to just adjust if you've got, sometimes we've got some flesh there underneath the sitting bones, that's okay. But just allowing yourself to have a nice connection, okay? And almost the feeling here I like of you know when you're excited and you're sitting forward in your seat, that's what we want to affect to start. So I'm on the tips of my heels, my knees come together, and I'm going to bring my hands in behind my knees. And then rather than slumping back, I've got that eager, can't wait to see what's next. Okay? And then from here, the one thing I would say before, rather than locking your two hands in, the other thing you can do, particularly if balance is an issue today, is just use your hands beside you for a little extra support as we bring our heels just off of the mat. Okay, so you could be here, or you could be here. And there is going to be some lean here, but we're not crunching, we're not bringing our head forward, we're trying to keep our body in that static shape. So it's like our, almost like our dandasana, but tipped, almost like our staff pose. When I get thinking about poses mid practice, I go back to my training. So staff pose, okay, but just inverted it a little bit. So we're here, heels can be a little bit off the mat, and then we'll come on down, okay? And let's, in between, just bring the soles of our feet together. Okay, again, sitting up proudly, tall, shoulders come back. And then here, maybe just a gentle lift to bring the heels ever so slightly off the mat. So I'm sort of pointing my toes down, just so that we're not stressing, we're not sickling our ankles or stressing anything out there. Okay? And then totally okay, we're not trying to wishbone or anything here, but just bring your little bit of weight into the inner thighs. Yeah. And you can bring your forehead forward and up as your legs gently receive a bit of pressure from the outside of the lower arms. Okay, now I don't completely forget about that boat. We're going to come back there, but instead, what I'm going to do is, you can see I've taken my left leg out. My right leg's going to stay right where it is, and I'm going to bring my left knee onto the sole of the right foot. So I'm in this little sort of staggered position. Okay, so just bring it back. I was here. I take the left leg out, I bring the left knee in, good. And then from here, what's going to naturally happen is my left sitting bone, my left bum cheek in fact, is right up off of the mat, okay? So I'm going to, it's the feeling of it dropping down ever so slightly, so trying to weigh it down without torquing my knee. So if this starts to feel at all not great there, just back up, back off. And then take your hands out to the side. So I'm rotating my body, straight spine to inhale up, and coming across over to the side, okay? And then you can walk however much with your hands feels comfortable, and use that interplay between foot and knee for a little resistance as we twist. And then we're going to release out of that, come back to our cobbler's pose or our butterfly pose. Good, yeah. And then from here, we take the right leg out, bring the right knee in, okay, foot out. And look, we don't have to, in fact, if this was too much coming all the way across, we start on the forward side of the knee. If that feels good, still trying to sink this down, so we're getting a nice bit of an internal rotation here in the right hip. If this feels okay, maybe I bring the left hand across the knee. Okay, still feeling good? I play with bringing the right hand across. Absolutely. So here, if you're talking about the sole of the foot, the knee here, once these connect, oh, sure, absolutely. Yep, a little, to give yourself that little pull like that. And you can, so that we're practicing very upright here, but by all means, you might come across your body and actually lower down across your legs and find the stretch that way. And if, yeah, like I say, if putting your head down doesn't feel like the right call, don't do that. We're good just as we are. Okay, let's come back to our starting position. Hands come to the side, feet come wide, okay? And we're just gonna allow both knees to drop to one side. They don't have to come down all the way. Inhale, come up. Exhale, come down. And up and down. And you can see my body shifting. My hands are adjusting a little bit to compensate. So am I. Hey, nicely observed. It's funny. A lot of these poses where we're down on our backs or on our seats, as soon as we start moving, you see, I'm actually crawling toward the camera. Just kind of with this. If you keep me talking, keep us moving. This ends with my nose touching the camera lens in a moment. Okay, let's let that go. Oh, nose to nose. That's right. Okay. So if you need to back yourself up, that's totally cool. Let's bring ourselves back up and get ready for another boat just before we come back down. Okay. So how we do this? Okay, hands can be here for support, or they can be behind the knees. However we get there, float those heels just an inch. We can stay here. Maybe the hands come up, maybe. These are just options. So when this isn't a ladder that we're climbing. These are just, so they're not stopping points. Feet might come up to parallel with the mat. Arms might come up. Feet might come all the way up, so straightening the legs, not bending our low back or flexing out. So trying to maintain the neutral spine, bend the knees, and come on back down. All right. Right in here. Yeah, it's funny, often we'll talk about, I've been in a lot of classes where we talk about boat pose, and this is a big core pose, and for sure there's definitely something happening there just to keep us upright, but a lot of it's through the fronts of the thighs, right? Through the fronts of the hip. Let's add a little bit of play here with this. So what we're going to do is we're back to our sort of our cobbler setup. This is kind of a hybrid of our boat and our cobbler pose or butterfly pose. What I'm going to do is I've taken the first two fingers on either hand and I'm wrapping them around my beat up toes from being outside all summer, and then I'm just going to, with that support, lift up ever so slightly or not. So this is the play. Like, you may be just playing with balancing an inch off of the mat and you can come down. So you can almost sort of rock back and forth. There you go. Yeah, do all the little adjustments. And then from here, now, I'm actually going to come out of the pose for a second and show you. We could be, if we were down on the mat, now I'm really kind of stretching to do this, but here's a wide-legged forward fold type pose. We're going to aim for that in our balance. So we're here, the feet come up, the shoulders and chest are proud, so we're lean back in our neutral spine, and then you might play with bringing one foot away. Just start with one. Whoop. Whoop. Don't let the feet argue. It's okay. And then you can play. And what all the way is, like, the reality is here that depending on the length of your hamstrings and the muscles at the back of your leg, extending out in a safe way out into what would, might be taught as the quote-unquote full pose may, you see I just rolled out of it. It may be accessible, it may not, okay? In fact, if you like, you can do this just by, so if you're having I think you're there actually. So if you're with both hands, really it's just coordinating and finding, the steadiness, a place that feels comfortable. I like that particular pose because it's an ego pose, right? It feels like it should be easier than it is, and then it becomes this, why can't I do it? Why can't it? It's okay. It is whatever it is. Okay. What's that? Crabs are good too. Crabs are fantastic. And you know what? If you're probably just following my cues, I think I had some crab action going on too there for sure. Okay, let's actually bring that wide-legged stance into our seated pose just for a moment. So we're not going to worry too much about bringing our, pancaking our body forward. Instead, let's just bring our heels onto the mat and our toes up. And you can see I've kind of brought my toes back in space, like towards my face, so that I'm really allowing for a stretch down through the legs. Okay, good. And then sitting up through the front of the body. Good. And then here, let's actually just take our hands down. So you're leaning forward, but what you're not going to do is wherever your hands land, not pulling yourself down with muscular force like I'm now demoing, okay? So it's definitely not monkey see, monkey do here. Instead, the idea of being really tall, proud in our chest, so everything's up. Hands are going to go as far. Depends on the length of your arms. So this is not necessarily a flexibility issue or a strength issue. But beginning to lean without pulling. So I can even sort of grab my toes here. So a little bit of gentle flexion through your back, totally okay. So you can see I'll come here and I'm down and I'm comfortable and I'm getting the stretch through the backs of my legs. What I'm not doing, so if you take the peek here, is I'm going to let go and I can maintain position, right? As opposed to and like popping back up. So yes, at a certain point for sure you're going to get a forward bend in your spine, and that is totally cool. Press out through your big toes though, especially. Yeah. And then it's always that test, like, oh yeah, I can let go. Okay. When you're here, whatever you feel like is your final landing spot, like where you're like, okay, this is as low as I can go without compromising myself in some way or like really forcing it and making it not feel great, then wherever you are, let go with your hands, and can you bring just your upper back in space without losing the bend down here. So it's bend and then back. Ooh, bend and back. Whew. And then just let it go. Yeah, well, you know what? Let's give those muscles a little bit of release. So what we're going to do we've done a lot of work through the front of our bodies. So now we're going to actually find ourselves in a bridge situation so that we can lose some of that. Okay. So allow yourself to come back down to the mat, and head comes down. All right, and shoulders are grounded, allowing your body to drop down. I've got the soles of my feet again. I invite you to take yours there, flat on the mat, so knees are bent. And it's not so much about being able to reach down and touch the backs of your heels. That might be possible, that might not. Again, that comes down to like the length of your arms, the length of your torso, your legs. There's a lot going on. But really just the feeling of sort of like if you were to in fact, let's try this. Lift your legs up with those bent knees, and then just gently allow the feet to drop down. So just up on the inhale and exhale. Okay. Where those land naturally, that should be a nice spot. Okay. And then from here, what we're going to do is the feeling of hugging in towards our inner thighs a little bit. So we're not just going to splay our knees out. We're keeping everything grounded. Bring the backs of your upper arms into the mat. Fingers point up. Okay. And then from here, what we're going to do is inhale. And we're going to do this. This is going to be the longest, slowest bridge. Okay. So from the tip of your tail, so that the imaginary part, not the tailbone even, begin to imagine it flicking up towards your knees. And then your tailbone begins to rise. And then your sacrum, so that triangle of bone at the base of your spine, it starts to come up. So you're gently beginning to take some weight as your belly begins to rise, some weight into the backs of your arms. And now arching up, and the mid-back begins to come up. Okay, ground down through the big toes. So I was even just lifting off there. I'm grounding through my big toes. And then I brought my thumbs in behind my hips. You may not be that high. That's a-okay. Okay, we can be here. You might also bring your hands together underneath and shimmy your shoulders a little bit closer together. Your inner thighs pulling together, yeah, are going to hold you up, and then if you're binding your hands together underneath. Awesome. If it feels good, more of it. Now we can be here. You can also release down when that starts to be too much effort, and then just give yourself a little break. You can take both legs and drop them to one side and give yourself a little recline twist. We'll come back to that bridge again for a moment. Give yourself a little twist on the other side. Okay, and then we'll come on back and the feet drop down. Now, I should say too, we can roll up any amount. So your bridge might be just bringing your hips a couple inches off of the ground. It might be rolling up higher. Okay. And this time I'm not going to bind my arms. Instead, I've got these kind of robot arms. So I'm pressing my triceps into the mat and lifting my hips up ever so slightly higher, like little magnets on the inside of my knees. So they're hugging in toward one another. They're not touching, but they're, there in space. And then ground more weight into one foot. And with the support of your upper arms, you might lift one leg forward off of the ground. You might lift it 1 inch off of the ground. And then you can replace it. And again, say again, Deb, what's that? If you feel like collapsing after the first inch, then you have found your edge, which means that's probably as far as you go. So if you're, an inch away and then you lift your foot an inch off, don't worry about, the big lift off here. We're here, and if there's the shaking and the instability is there, okay, so there you go. There's the feedback. Okay, so if there's any other pose that is calling out to you, I realize that time is not on our side. I'm just going to do a little time check here without glasses. Oh, that's not going to work. I'm going to do a little time check here with glasses. Oh my goodness. Okay, well, time flies when you're having fun. Absolutely. So we'll wait on our strap work for next time we're down on our backs together. Instead, bring that pillow back. You might want to. I'm sorry. Say again. Yeah. Well, we can do that too. I'll tell you what. Actually, anyone else out there that has to run? You're okay, Adrian? Okay. Well, this won't take us too long. So let's do this. So if you've got a yoga strap like I've got here, I'm actually not gonna, maybe I'll use the strap on the other side. Let's say you find yourself in a situation where I'd love to do that stretch for the back of the legs, but I don't have a strap. Not a bother. Towel. Okay? That's all good. Okay, so what I'm doing is just sort of coming with the towel, bringing it across the top of the foot, pressing the toes in, and so I've got a grip on either side. Normally with the strap we would sort of change sides and turn like that. We're not going to bother because I don't have that long a towel. And instead I'm going to lay back, okay? And so that, before I worry about bringing my leg too far up, it's again that grounding in the opposite leg and hip that we had earlier. And then bringing the leg up. Pressing the ball of your foot into your towel or into your strap. And imagine here that not only you find yourself in a place, there's no yoga strap, there's no towel. that's okay. Here I am. Look, mom, no hands. Or actually, both hands, but no towel, no strap. Okay. And then we're just going to have the one stretch today. We're not going to go through the whole series. Bring the knee in. Good. And release that out. Take your towel and or your strap and or your TheraBand. Like really, there's lots of different options here depending on what you've got around the house. You could use a belt. You could use a skipping rope. You could use well, and like I said, you can use your hands too. It doesn't. The strap really. So I think that we're sometimes the feeling is, oh, I have to have a strap, otherwise I can't bring my leg up, because the feeling is often one of pulling down into the leg. Okay, and so in some senses, losing our strap or losing our towel, and then just supporting ourselves ever so slightly and pressing our foot up toward the sky. That's kind of what we want to be about here anyway. So if you're feeling tremors on one side and not the other, that, I mean, it could mean a lot of things. What I would interpret that to mean in most cases is that you have more strength in the non-tremor leg, and the other one that's shaking a little bit, it's feeling you're taking it to the same place. It's maybe the non-dominant leg not as strong, and so then you get your tremor. Tremors are great in the sense that it's like the body is, it's in that point of instability, the muscle is fatiguing and having difficulty staying with it. So to some extent, when I'm practicing, I'm looking for that. So I'm trying to find that wherever I am. Let's release the leg down. Let's find yourself with we'll lose the towel or the strap. We'll get our pillow. And again, just scooching it under towards our sitting bones. Taking the legs wide, supporting ourselves with our hands so we're not just dropping unsupported. And then lowering down. And take a moment to reflect without thinking on the fact that when we're practicing yoga, when we're moving our bodies around the mat, we really do move into more of a response pattern than a reactive pattern. I don't know about you, but I can feel like my pulse, my energy, everything is just a lot calmer, a lot smoother than 30, 40 minutes ago. So last thing I'll say as let's have about 90, what I'm going to estimate will be about 90 seconds here in the Shavasana, or maybe a couple of minutes, this corpse pose. And the last thing I'll say to you is, no problem to solve. No problem to solve. Nothing to do here. Just let yourself be. moves into rest, it can feel like a letting go, like everything is dropping down or relaxed or however. There's so many ways to describe that. What I like to play with sometimes in this position is resting that feeling of relaxation wherever that is. And then on my exhale, just exploring, seeing, can I let go anymore, anywhere? Is there anywhere where I've got just a little bit of tension? And invariably it can feel like, oh yeah, I did let go a little bit more there, and there's this new level of relaxation, new level of letting go. So I pause and enjoy that. And then as I exhale, I let go a little bit more. Okay, let's bring both hands, just sweeping them along the floor, up over your head, and bring our toes together, and then press out so that our fingertips or our index fingers, if they're together, pointing up over our head, our toes are pointing down towards past the foot of our mat. And then inhale and everything comes up. You're in your revolved child's pose and just a little rock from side to side. And then rocking onto your right side. Pause here, take a moment, and then when it feels like the time is right, your left hand comes onto the mat. You might swing the left leg out and press up, and up you go. I like to give myself a little twist here, one way, and then the next. Ooh. And then your pillow, if it's still handy, you can just come right up onto it, and that brings your hips up a little bit higher, allowing you to sit a bit more comfortably. Even if you've got your pillow as a fancy meditation pillow, my goodness. Okay. So, final thought for today as we close the practice out. I was saying to the group, I think last week or the week before, that I was talking about my decision a while back that I'd moved away from namaste and into saying peace or peace out at the end of practice. But I was meditating, it was a guided meditation, and the instructor was leading me through and was talking about how when we meet sort of out in the wild, like in our pre-COVID times, that frequently we'd extend a hand and shake as a way of literally physically connecting, like becoming one with another. And that one way of thinking about that traditional namaste with palms pressed together is that it's mimicking that. Like you are saluting the other and yourself. So it is that connection within and without. So let's close the practice saying whatever you say internally or externally. So that's a namaste or peace or thank you or whatever it is. Especially directing that your own way, because you made the time to be here. Or if you're tuning in later, you made the time then. Be well. I'm sorry, say again? No, you totally, you're all good. I'm going to just give me a second here, live peeps. I'm just gonna pop the, oh, hold on, come on.